Great. Okay, I'm just going to put it on there. Well, first off, it's truly an honor to be on this dais here. I mean, quite a group of speakers. I've been fortunate to hear a couple already. So my name is Jim Michalowicz. I am with a company called TE Connectivity, and as probably put on the brochure, I'm also known as a luminary, which is kind of a lofty title to have with what we call the Legal Value Network, which is basically a group of legal department operations managers who assemble and share best practice and try to move forward with what we're looking at now as well as ahead of us. I am based in the United States. I hope you don't hold that against me, but I will say that our law department at TE Connectivity is global. We have operations in the Americas, in EMEA, and also in Asia Pacific. We're a company about 12 billion plus in revenue and employees close to 75,000 employees. Law department has about 200 members, half of which are attorneys. You'll see in the one bucket I've got here on the side, it says TEOA everywhere. And I just want you to know what that means. TE Operating Advantage is what that acronym stands for. And I think it's appropriate given that what I'm talking about is really the future of legal operations. So we have what we call a process improvement program. That's what TEOA is. It's a combination of Six Sigma and also business lean. So first, just a little bit of background as far as the law department, which I'm in. We're made up of practice groups, and we have 11 specialized legal practice groups that you see there, as well as 3 commercial practices that support the business segments, and those business segments are made up of individual business units. So I guess in some ways, as much as it's a law department, a corporate law department, there's some similarity to what a law firm. So we have different practice areas, and one of the challenges of being in law department operations is being the connector and making sure it's coordinated, because it's very easy to fall into silos. And as much as this is about technology, it's also about people, process, and technology. And one of my key roles, as I say, is to connect the dots between these different groups as we move forward. So let me start off by sharing a few different questions that was posed in a survey of law department operations managers. First question, this was done by my friend Brad Blickstein with the Blickstein Group. He does an annual law department operations survey. The first question was, what impact has the pandemic had?
James, we seem to have lost you. Hello? Is that my screen which is frozen?
Take any opportunities as a result of a pandemic, but frankly, I think it forced more adoption and also the investment in certain technology, especially when it came to collaboration. So I think this was an interesting one as far as the transformation being spurred in some ways by COVID. Question number 2 was the reliance on technology. Do you have or plan to develop a legal department technology strategy or 3-year roadmap which addresses how you integrate, evolve, and replace your systems to support the legal department's processes and needs? So there's a lot built in that question. One is, are you looking ahead, a 3-year roadmap regarding technology? And also, does it integrate, evolve,
James? Hello, James?
Resiliency becomes a really important part. So there was a real uptick from 2019 to 2020 from the respondents who says 49%, yes, we have a strategy. And that's a big move. So again, hard to say if COVID prompted more people to give that response, but I thought that was an interesting statistic. I would say for us in the TE Connectivity Law Department, we would be more in that 42%. We are planning or developing a strategy. So I can't say that we've got a firm one, but it is kind of like a maturing process. And the third slide, and really the last one as far as questionnaire and a survey talks about the law firm side. Law firms are leveraging technology to deliver legal services more effectively and cost efficiently. So you see a little bit more as far as 2019 to 20 that said that they agree with that, but that's still a large percentage that don't see it. So I will say that my position, I have been in law departments. I was at DuPont for 13 years. I was at Tyco International for 2 years, and now I've been at TE Connectivity for 5 years. So I'm probably more in buying legal services, but I was also in the legal service provider space in delivering, these type of services to clients such as corporate law departments. So I think it's interesting that there's not a whole lot of movement there, that the buyers of these services from law firms are really seeing that the technology is being applied in a way that's delivering it more efficiently as also effectively. So let me kind of posit to you the following, which is kind of, I guess I'll call it my theses in some ways about what are we seeing and what is the future of law department operations. So you'll see there, I have put a very large cap on what's called productivity. And that's what most of what I'm going to talk about in the remaining time here is about productivity. But you'll see the various different, I guess, adjectives or responsibilities in law department operations that we've all had at some point. And it's also reflected in our titles. I see that often, how the titles change. When I got first involved in legal operations, we probably called it more legal administration. And there's only probably like 4 or 5 people that had such a title, at least in the United States, of a law department operations director or manager. And that has obviously grown a lot, especially with the Association of Corporate Counsel and other different kind of collegial organizations, where the growth and opportunities for people who have law department operations background has really grown more and more. But I've also said that I've had the roles of a therapist, trying to console people as far as how to deal with their problems, and not that it's always technology that's the solution. We talk about client value in terms of what we deliver on. Is it valuable to our clients? And often those are, in the law department, our internal customers. We talk about operational excellence. A lot of what we found, at least in the United States, is a lot of the law department operations professionals, they came out of litigation management or litigation support, e-discovery. Why is that? I think a lot of it has to do with, for a lot of companies, litigation is one of the biggest spend areas. So you're looking to apply some kind of cost controls in there. And that's why I think operations folks often are kind of like brought in from the litigation space. Legal project management, LPM, has become very popular. That's one of the disciplines. Process improvement. I think often we in law department operations have to be a salesperson. We need to sell to company leadership, the investment in us, especially if we're looking for technology and we're competing against other functions, within the company. So I found I have to be a salesperson. Often records management or information governance falls under our title. Technology manager, sure. Spend management, as I said before, that's what has driven a lot of the positions in law department operations, is spend management. So I call that the Technicolor dream coat that's worn by legal operations. Now, I'm a big believer in data visualization. So what I'm going to show you in the next 2 slides are scorecards. And this is what we use at our law department to show how does the law department at TE Connectivity deliver our value proposition. And what is that value proposition? It's to enable business growth and to protect revenue and profit margins. So what I'm showing you some examples of kind of like our scorecard, and you'll see that the first one is about speed. And there are a couple different areas, and I'm going to try to bring up what Kwame and Leah were talking about previously about the application of productivity tools and helping to address the topic of speed. So what we find when we talk to our internal customers is that they put a big value on speed, and that goes directly to enabling business growth. How quickly can we turn around NDAs, contracts? How quickly can we onboard third-party suppliers? How quickly can we close cases? And how quickly can we file patents? So we actually set up measurements for what we call STR, which is ship to request. What are the requirements of our customers, and how effectively do we turn around those? So for us to be able to hit those targets, we need technology. We need productivity tools as well as people, as well as good process. So that's the combination, and that really is what I see my role is in the law department in operations. If you look down, I'm not going to spend too much time on some of these, but if you look down on the left, you'll see something that's called BES. And there's 2 slides there, or 2 charts for BES. That's called our Business Engagement Survey. That talks about effectiveness. How effective is the law department in delivering our services? And we ask our customers questions. How are we relative to accountability, risk balance, knowledge of the businesses, trust, cross-coordination? And we measure that. We measure that on a quarterly basis. And we identify if there's areas of concern. We do root cause analysis to try to identify where is it that we're not delivering on that. And we also ask questions regarding overall customer satisfaction. As far as enablement, how do we enable you, business customer, to do your job better? On the top right, this is where most law department operations seem to kind of fall into, which is how do you address how you're doing against a budget? So spend as a percentage of revenue, spend as your law department spending as a percentage of company revenue. It's a well-regarded, I guess, well-used metric across really, I think, across all companies. So we measure that. We also do engagement of the employees. So within our law department, how do they feel that they're being included, that their voice matters, how they're being engaged as far as developing goals and objectives, and for also their own professional development. And we do that across the company. Same thing with the other data metrics. How are we doing with that? Are there areas of concern? Do we need to address that? So it's a very proactive, not a reactive kind of process we put. Again, all based on data. And then on the second slide, you'll see some numbers that I think very few law departments actually show. And it's a breakdown as far as cost savings, but also recoveries and revenue. So going back to the value proposition, what is it that we do as a law department? Enable business growth, but also protect revenue and profit margin. So if you look at the top left, it's a cost savings to budget. What are the different categories that we actually are showing savings against our legal department budget and saving basically our business customers money as far as the delivery of legal services? We track that in what we call a productivity tracker. We built that in SharePoint, and every member of the law department is able to contribute to that, document it, and then we report it in quarterly meetings with our company leadership. On the right-hand side, you'll see recoveries and revenue. So this is when the company has incurred some damage, and we are trying to go ahead and basically get money for those damages, for relief. So when we are successful in that, we record that. If we're also able to negotiate when it comes to maybe claims against a company, and we're able to reduce the loss, we're able to record that as well. We wouldn't be able to do this unless we had some kind of systems to track all this. Because I can tell you 2 or 3 years ago, these were simply emails that were being sent by individuals, and somehow we try to gather them all together and then try to report out how we are actually doing this area. So we now have systems that generate this data, and now we're able to do this. And I can't tell you how powerful a story this is when you're able to go ahead and to present this to company leadership. And when they're asking, what's our return on investment for legal services? Because usually the first question, or the first response is, working with legal is too expensive. That's almost always what's going to be the first one. But if you can able to say, well, wait a second here, this is what you're getting back. Here's revenue we're bringing back. Here's also money to TE we're bringing back in terms of what we're calling recoveries. Then you add that all up, then you have a pretty compelling argument. And the other thing that we show is pipeline projects. So these are basically continuous improvement projects. You'll see that we do some resourcing. And I think that COVID and some of the effects of that has forced some of that on us as far as how we're moving some of the mobilization of our resources and who does some of the work, especially routine work. And we also are doing what we're calling workload optimization analyses. It's a diagnostic tool which I developed, which helps each of our different practice groups to basically kind of not do timesheets, but to record what is their effort on simple tasks. And if some of those things are very routine and we can move that to a different provider, different professional, we'll do that. And that increases capacity. And that's the other thing that we're measuring is what do we free up once we kind of shift the workload, and we track that, and then how do we use that capacity? It could mean there are some changes as far as your staffing, but it also could mean that you're actually moving people to what we consider higher value work. So if a person's doing more routine tasks that are, okay, can be done by a different professional, then that person's freed up maybe to do more revenue generation, more recoveries. And we're also looking at things as far as insourcing. Some of our patent filings that we've outsourced. We now have the ability to do some of that. Technology has definitely had a play in that, but also improvement as far as processes are concerned. And the other thing which I think is interesting, because our budget is about 40 to 45% of that is spending on outside legal services, with the rest being on our internal law department. So we are looking to basically track the productivity that I'm showing you right now for the law department. We want to say the same thing for our service providers. So those law firms and other alternative legal service providers, we want them to be on fee arrangements that are based on productivity, not on just hours. It's going to be, we are able to deliver, and we're going to show you some metrics of how we're going to deliver on those results. So this, one more slide, I'm sorry, I wanted just to show you. Just because I know that Kwame was talking a bit about AI and AI application. So we ventured into AI space almost a year ago, and it was focused on contract review, starting with NDAs. And we use a platform that's called Black Boiler. And one of the beauties of it is that it's able to generate some really good metrics for us. So as I mentioned on one of the earlier scorecard charts, speed. So we're able to show cycle time. How quick did we turn around this first pass review? How long did we spend on this as far as review time? So our AI tool basically does some, I'll say, reuse of knowledge. It shows what our editing practices were, and it applies it to the first pass of an edit of a contract. And then the reviewer and the law department will look at those edits, but for the most part, they'll agree with them, and then they do that next level of review. So this is definitely quickened as far as our ability to turn around contracts with the AI application. And it's also freed up as far as some hours as far as capacity is concerned. And one other thing I'll just mention about this, because we have matured in the use of AI for contract review, we feel now that we can resource that to some of our operations in Bangalore, India. So that's almost like our own captive alternative legal service provider. But now we feel that we can move that work offshore to do that. So really this leads me to my last slide. And it's kind of like, what do I see moving ahead of the role of legal operations? So I'm still going to focus on that word productivity. And I really do believe that ultimately what we are productivity managers, and we have to demonstrate that. And I think when we have such things as COVID or other disruptions, we need to be able to show productivity and being resilient. So a couple of things that I kind of call out here. One is, you'll see on the left, cost per activity. So that could be on cost per transaction. How much did it cost for to review a contract? How much did it cost to do a real estate transaction? How much did it cost to do a patent filing? And a number of our legal service providers, our law firms and alternative legal service providers, that's how they basically bill their work for us. Not hourly billing, but actually on productivity based. So we feel that we need to do the same thing internally to kind of justify what we bring in-house, insourcing, as well as what we send outside. So I think I'd like to say that there's a new acronym called PPP, which is productivity per professional. Many of you have worked in law firms, have another version of PPP, which is profits per partner. I understand that, that's the law firm economic model. But yes, when we work with our law firms, we want them to be profitable, but we need to be able to also demonstrate that there's being productive and trying to meet our needs, especially around cost management and also delivering other type of results. I think we're going to see more efficiency ratings. You saw some of my metrics, speed metrics. I think we're going to have more ratings relative to efficiency using either outside services or internal services. There's been a greater use of diversity metrics, looking at outside legal providers as well as internally, as far as how are women and minorities being recognized and how are they engaged on matters. So using that data. Resiliency metrics, I think that the value proposition delivery, being able to show it with different type of data visualization is going to be becoming more important in what we do. And I'd also say that productivity tools and return on investment. AI got to be very catchy and it looks great. And I think as one of the earlier speakers said, does it address the problem? You got to start with your problem statement. And as we're making investments, what is that return on investment going to be? And I have found that, at least early on, that a lot of the AI providers did not have a good answer to that. It looked good, it looked cool, but it did not necessarily address how does it solve a problem and how does it get ROI, which is really what I need to do to sell this type of investment within our company. Moving to the right, I think that business performance maturity tracking, we track that internally and we do some benchmarking. I call that voice of the industry to see how are we performing as a business. And when I say a business, I'm talking about the law department as a business. I think we're going to see more law operations professionals serving as workflow engineers. A lot of these different technology products, they can be clunky. And you as a law operations professional are really looking how do these things connect together? How does one workflow, where does it fall off and where does the other one pick up? So especially working with so many different practice groups, that's one of my roles is see how does this workflow go across different practice groups and even within the practice group and also into our businesses, our customers. I already mentioned before about the productivity-based alternative fee arrangements. I think we're going to see more and more of that, and I'm hoping that there is more demand by law departments of their law firms to have those type of alternative fee arrangements. And the last thing I'm going to mention, and this is probably more focus on the United States, but diversity in legal operations professionals. I think there has been a much more emphasis on those within the law firms and also in the corporate law departments, as far as those in roles, be it partner, managing partner, general counsels, assistant general counsels. But I got to tell you, to the various different programs I do attend a fair number in law department operations. There's very little diversity when it comes to minorities. I think it's diverse when it comes to gender, but there isn't a lot. And this has become a really established profession. And I'd like to see much more diversity in the ranks of those. So Natasha, that is pretty much what I wanted to speak about. I hope if there's any questions. If not, I hope to maybe get you guys back on schedule. I hope this was helpful for everyone.
Thanks, James. We just have one question for you. So that was definitely great stuff. And from your point of view, how do you think that the rest of the world is stacking up against how America is doing in terms of learning to use these essential legal technologies?
Yeah, I'm glad the question was, how are we doing stacking up against other things such as the pandemic? So thank you for that wasn't asked. So I got to tell you, I think there's been more innovation and creativity I've seen, especially in both the EMEA and APAC. I think that is something which I try to tap onto. It's very easy for us to create our own silos. I talked about silos earlier, just in the United States, and that's where the exchange is. But these type of forums, like what you're offering, Natasha, is really helpful because I learned about the other voices. So I think that in some ways we've evolved, especially I think how we're reporting data in terms of the value proposition, but in terms of the creativeness and innovation regarding the technology and the application, I think we could learn a lot more from some of the APAC and EMEA partners.
Thank you so much, James. It was a pleasure to have you. Next up, we have Shannon. She'll be discussing flexibility